VikesNow, Dustin Baker here, Saturday, April 9th. We are covering the positional strengths and weaknesses of the team, the Vikings, before the draft. This video is probably more geared to casual fans because you obsessionists like this dude, you probably know him like the back of your hand. So I'm trying to cover all the bases here. Before the draft, which is about 3 weeks, it's less than 3 weeks now, we're going to go through the strengths and the weaknesses of the team. And just right out of the gate, I'm not touching the quarterback because the debate there is unsolvable. It's insatiable. I believe a quarterback who throws 33 touchdowns to 7 interceptions in a season where there was virtually no garbage time, I think that is a buildable passer. And some of yous, it's all just a big hoax. He ain't that good. And so we could make a whole show on that. I'm sure at some point we will. But I'm not going to evaluate that as a strength or a weakness because it's just too interpretive. So we have that out of the gate. The important thing to lift up, I encourage you guys to do this exercise on your own, whether you go to ESPN.com or that Our Lad site or pretty much any place with a roster or depth chart. One thing you're going to find, and this sucks, is the team isn't very deep unless the reservist players in their second year, third year in some cases, all of a sudden are really good. If that happens, then yes, they're fine and they're deep. If they don't, the roster is not very, very deep. You'll find that if you do this exercise. Go to ESPN.com with the Vikings depth chart and look for each position. Tell me which ones are the strongest. Type them in the comments. Tell me which ones are the weakness or where you differ with me. Because of this, I've found that there's only 2 spots on the roster that I consider satisfactory, above average for depth, and then there are about 4, and I'll stick to 3 of them for the most part, that are weaknesses. So we're going to document those for the April 9th edition, and then maybe we can revisit it this summer and see how things are progressing. So I'll start with the weaknesses. The third weakest spot is the safeties. Harrison Smith is not weak. Cameron Bynum did not appear to be weak as a rookie. He seized the moment as a rookie when Hitman missed those couple games, and he played damn well. It didn't even look like Hitman was missed when Cameron Bynum was on the field for 1 or 2 of those games. But limited sample size, not sure if he'll replicate it, but it appears they're going to give Bynum the starting job. By the way, the criteria for this, for depth, when I'm trying to size this up in my head is, let's subtract 1 starter from that spot, and what are our emotions about that position? So that's where I'm at, resetting the table there. So safety, Harrison Smith, Cameron Bynum, Josh Metellus, Miles Dorn. Hitman's the only guaranteed commodity. Let that settle for a minute. That does not equal depth. There's a lot of hope with Cameron Bynum, especially because they haven't signed a free agent to be a veteran safety like Jakiski Tart, or one of those gentlemen. The Eagles got one today, Ronnie McLeod. So there's depth safeties out there that are all of a sudden starting to go off the board yesterday on Friday. But that's a weakness because you have Harrison Smith and young guys that need to prove themselves. Will it happen? Bynum, probably, hopefully. The other guys are just reservist dudes. So that's a weakness right out of the gate. The second weakest position, I wish I had cool graphics on here so I could plaster them on the screen. What is this, week 3 of us doing this show? I'll get there. I'm not pursuing how to do that now, but I know it'll make this thing a lot more flashy and legitimized. The second weakest spot is the cornerbacks. Even with Patrick Peterson back, even with Chandon Sullivan coming to fill the slot job, and then all the other guys, Nate Harrison, Ty Smith. Subtract one of those guys from the depth chart week 1. Something happens, maybe not quite like a Bridgewater injury, but the timing of the Bridgewater injury from 2016. Let's say Patrick Peterson dinged up, can't go week 1. You're going to panic. Unless Derek Stingley or Mod Sauce Garner is on this purple and yellow football team, cornerbacks are in trouble. Just like we felt 2 weeks ago when it was Cameron Dantzler as CB1, Chandon Sullivan as CB2, and then probably Chris Boyd, CB3, or Nate Harrison. So there's a depth problem at corner. Now, if they do draft a first-round corner, Andrew Booth, that Kyer Elam, or if they hit gold and they get Sauce or Sting, then it feels a lot better. But I think the second most problematic weakness is the cornerback, because if you subtract one of those guys, primarily Dantzler or Peterson, oofta, you're scared, rightfully so. Weakest spot on the depth chart, if we had this show in the past, we could say this every week, is the interior defensive line. So I want you to really think about this. Think about all the other spots on the Vikings roster, whether it's the quarterback. I don't think anybody really thinks quarterback's horrible, but most think he's good or above average or sometimes elite, but that's only like 4 games a year. Every other spot on this depth chart has a guy at that position that's like, okay, we're good. We got Patrick Peterson. We're good because Dalvin Tomlinson's in the middle of the defensive line. The interior of the offensive line, not talking about the bookends and Darisaw and Brian O'Neill, all 3 of them in the middle are, let's hope they work out. And that's why this pass protection folly has been a problem for a decade. I'll give Ezra Cleveland benefit of the doubt because he's playing pretty well. He's playing like a normal rookie, second year offensive lineman should progress. He's probably a bona fide left guard. He was a tackle in college, but move the guy around. Nobody cares in the Vikings organization. They'll make it work. So Ezra Cleveland is kind of immune to this because he seems to be traveling along a trajectory that good players do. However, it wouldn't be unheard of if he took a step back because that's usually what Vikings offensive linemen in the middle do. But we'll put him on an island for now. He's okay. Garrett Bradbury, a supreme question mark. And it seems like the new regime's going to give it a whirl with him, which is fine, I suppose. He's a good run blocker, and he can catch the ball when it just fortuitously goes up in the air at Lambeau Field. But he's a weakness. There's no other way to put it. And unless they get Cole Strange in the NFL draft or sign J.C. Tretter with money that they don't have, you are going to waltz into the preseason to the regular season with Bradbury again and just merely praying that a new staff knows how to manage his skill set. Not an ideal spot to be. And then right next to him is the everlasting right guard calamity. Since 2017, Joe Berger, he was decent there. 4 straight campaigns at right guard, it's been and it doesn't ever seem to get any better. Oli Udoh, sans penalties, was decent for a little bit. But this year, they're taking a different approach. They got Wyatt Davis, Jesse Davis, Chris Reed, who actually looks pretty good, and then the incumbent, Udoh. But that is like a Bon Jovi line, living on a prayer there, hoping that one of those 4 guys emerges as a solution. And one of them probably will, at least to average proficiency per the analytics, per Pro Football Focus. But the number one weakness on this football team, and I don't even know, they're probably not going to spend high draft capital on it to fix it, is the interior offensive line. And it shouldn't surprise you because we have the same damn conversation, at least in writing and now on video in this show, every offseason this time. Are they going to fix it? The only solace that you can have for these next 5 long months waiting for the regular season is that a new coaching staff might have the elixir, because otherwise this is a curse, just like the mini kicker curse for the Vikings. That pass protection, when you got a guy who's not crazy mobile and Cousins, we ain't going to protect him. It's mind-boggling. It's the insanity type of quote. So those are the weaknesses: the safety, cornerbacks, and then offensive line. And you could throw a linebacker in there. There's enough young guys for depth that between Ryan Connolly, Blake Lynch, and Troy Dye, Chaz Surratt, a lot of guys, maybe one of them sticks if Hicks or Kendricks encounters a small injury. So an argument can be made for them to tie with safety as the 3rd weakest. On to the strengths. Here's the problem part. I only got 2 spots on the depth chart where you would say we're sitting pretty. And that's a problem, especially for a team that is a pseudo Super Bowl contender, or at least a team that has ownership that says we're going to be ultra competitive. So the second strongest spot, by my estimation, is wide receiver. And that's because compared to other NFL teams, the Vikings got a pretty nice setup. Justin Jefferson is taking the league by storm. You've watched every game of it. You believe it. He's only 22 years old. I always want you to remember that until he turns 23. Then you can remember that he's 23. But this is otherworldly. The production he's putting up. Just don't even have Diggs in your mind. If you never met Stephon Diggs, if you've never seen him on the television, wherever Jefferson ended up, especially on these Vikings, the first 2 years out of the gate are mesmerizing. It just so happens that he was the trade exchange for Stephon Diggs, who was pretty damn good in his own right. But I knew early on, not like before anybody else or anything, I'm not that cool, but it was at week 3 of 2020, week 4, week 5, when you started to see Jefferson make these catches and not just kind of sit down after the route was down, but kind of flail his way to extra yardage. You know how he does it. That this dude was going to be good. And I'd say within 5 career games, when the ball was in the air from Kirk Cousins' right wrist, I knew that Jefferson was going to come down with it. It was the same comfort level that I had with Diggs, who was incredibly handsy. That was one of the best part of Diggs' game, is that when the ball got around him, damn it, he was going to catch it. And so for Justin Jefferson at age 21 to inspire that same level of confidence right away is magical. I digress on Jefferson. I think we get a little bit excited in these circles talking about such a young receiver who's going to be a very rich receiver in a matter of years. The wide receiver, and then you have Thielen, Old Faithful. KJ Osborne emerged as a WR3, begging for that for years. Amir Smith-Marset, WR4, and then after that you have question marks of B.C. Johnson, Blake Prohl. I don't think BB will be back, maybe, and Tristan Jackson, Myron Mitchell, just a bunch of those guys that you'll see at training camp. But the top 4, Jefferson, Thielen, Osborne, Amir Smith-Marset, that's doable. If Jefferson misses 2 or 3 games, you're not going to have a humongous panic attack, especially if Irv Smith is healthy and playing in the middle of the field at tight end. So second deepest, would be wide receiver. And again, I apologize there's not 3 spots, but I ask you to go find a spot on the Vikings depth chart that is deep aside from the 2 that I'm mentioning here today. The deepest spot, it's one of the small spots, is running back. We've already seen what happens when Dalvin Cook goes down. For the most part, if you go look at the record in games without Cook, I should have pulled this up for the show, but I didn't. I forgot. Record with Cook versus without Cook, inflated by 2017, but the Vikings don't have supreme problems when they have to pivot to Alexander Mattison. So from top to bottom right now, it's Dalvin Cook, Alexander Mattison, who's probably in his final year with the team per his rookie contract, and then the mythical Kene Nwangwu, who we want to know if he's a running back too. We know what he can do in special teams. We want to see if he can be utilized in this brand new offensive coach's scheme. And then A.J. Rose, the preseason god last year, who scored, was it the first or one and only touchdown for the Vikings preseason? It was pretty wild. But from top to bottom, it's not legendary, but it's Dalvin Cook, Mattison, Nwangwu, and A.J. Rose. That's pretty solid. Unless you're planning for life after Dalvin Cook, you don't really need to go get another running back this draft. They probably will because the Vikings always seem to do that. Maybe they'll get Dalvin's brother in the 3rd round, 5th round. Who knows what type of draft movement there will be via trade. But yes, running back, although Dalvin is getting up there, at least in terms of his prime, I would say that you don't have to worry about the running back position in terms of injury, because A, we've already lived it, and then B, you've got Mattison and Nwangwu and A.J. Rose if they had to call him up on the practice squad. So, this was a lesson, so to speak, that just like the fears last year, the team was somewhat thin, turned out to be pretty paper thin when some of the injuries arose. We're in that same boat again, and it's unlikely that it'll be fixed because they just don't have any free agent money right now. So you have to do a lot of leaning on the notion that the guys that have developed in the last 2 underwhelming seasons are going to grow up on the fly, and if they're inserted in the lineup, they're going to play pretty well. And that's the bench players I'm talking about, because otherwise the Vikings are not very deep. So this was kind of a depressing episode, but hopefully you consider it sobering. That running back, wide receiver, those are good spots to be deep at, but the rest is either average or not deep at all, particularly cornerback, interior offensive line, and safety. Reminders, Ben Lever will be here with me at 10 a.m. on Monday, which means it'll post to you at about 11 a.m. Lindsey Young, who writes for the Vikings about the Vikings on Wednesday, and Nick Olson, alas, will join us on Friday. All we got for Saturday, and we'll see you Sunday. Skol, baby.